Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Regina Lee, and I am a co-chair of the 11th Annual Social Enterprise Conference at Columbia with Albert Lim. And we wanted to thank you all for coming today on behalf of ourselves and our conference committee and the governing board. We have heard great discussions and debate today, and we hope that we can carry this on through the end of the day in this keynote and then the networking reception to follow. When we thought about our conference theme this year, we wanted to focus on a topic that would bring together stakeholders to address the huge social and environmental challenges we face today in 2012. We chose the theme of aligning strategy to maximize impact because we believe there is tremendous opportunity for organizations, many that we see here today, to come together to really think about and align on what strategies we can pursue as a whole to solve these problems. Whether it's in the public sector, in the government sector, for-profit, and nonprofit. We hope that we can continue this discussion, as I said, into the rest of the day. We also want to give a big thank you to all of our conference volunteers and the conference committee that you've seen wandering around today. We couldn't have done this without them. We'd also like to thank Columbia's Social Enterprise Program, specifically Professors Ray Fissman and Bruce Usher, Sandra Navali, Saiba Anand, Gwen Shufro, Heather Barbakoff, and Tiffany Pollock. You all have been an inspiration to us all. Woo! And they've offered tremendous insight and support throughout the last 8 months of planning.
We would also like to thank some people and organizations external to Columbia and the Social Enterprise Program, all of whom have helped to make the university, the conference, and the Social Enterprise Program a place where real issues are discussed and solved. We especially rely on the practitioners on our conference governing board and our Social Enterprise Program advisory board, all of whom keep us up to date on the ever-expanding range of topics that make up the social enterprise space. I would also like to again thank our corporate partners and our media and in-kind sponsors. This conference not only benefits from their financial and material generosity, but also for sending their representatives today to help highlight how their organizations, both small and big, are trying to help increase social impact. And then finally, just 2 last notes before we move on. First, you will find in the program addendum some instructions for a post-conference survey that we would really appreciate if you filled out. We'll be using the MGood texting software, which if you were in the social venture pitch competition worked like a charm. And it's a quick 4-question mobile texting survey that we would appreciate. We'll be opening that survey up at 5 p.m. after this last keynote, and it would be great if you could just help us out and just answer some quick questions. And then second, if you notice on the tables, there are some beautiful mums on them, and as you probably are well aware of, they don't die quickly, and we want to find them a nice home. So feel free as you're leaving the conference to take them on the way out. We would love them to find nice houses in your apartments and homes. And then on that note, I'd like to welcome our closing keynote session speakers who will be discussing a wide range of corporate social responsibility issues. Let me pass the mic off to Joe Silbilia, CEO of CSR Wire, founder of a number of socially focused organizations and moderator of today's panel. Joe?
Thank you.
Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Regina. Thank you, Sarah. 1 hour before cocktails. I'm really in awe of this event, and I'm really impressed by the quality of the people that I've met here, and the execution of this event has been incredible for me, and it gives all of us great hope and anticipation for the future. So thank you very much. For the first time in history, for the first time in history, the ideas of the spiritual traditions that we are all connected are being manifested in the reality of the internet and social media. You men and women here, all of us, are living in a time and place that's the most unusual in history. We are all connected. We are all together. We are all in this together. And you are the leaders of that movement to emphasize and communicate those ideals. You are making the change that's going to make the world a better place. So I really appreciate and am hopeful for the future. So thank you. I'd also like to mention that at CSR Wire, it's been an incredible journey for us. We started with 117 members. We now have 8,000 members. We communicate to over 1 million people worldwide. Journalists, analysts, activists, investors, public relations professionals, investor relations professionals. And one thing that I'm finding out very clearly in the past year or so is the idea of social innovation, social enterprise, anything that applies the tools of business to solve a social or environmental problem spikes the interest in the audience globally. There's a global hunger for what you're about to do in your lives and in your careers and what you're thinking of doing. There's a global anticipation for this. And there are career opportunities that you can't even imagine that are happening. There's career opportunities in management consulting. There's career opportunities in entrepreneurships inside of companies. And you'll hear from 3 people today that are doing that inside of companies. When we first started in this effort, it was all fighting. It was all an opposition. It was all negative screening. Now it's turned, the page has been turned to positive efforts. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for you to create your own careers inside of companies and create your own social enterprises, and I look forward to hearing about all of them. Today we have Jen Crozier from IBM. She's the Vice President of Global Citizenship Initiatives, and she's doing some incredible work, and she'll share a couple of minutes of what she's doing. We also have Richard Hall, the Director of Global Citizen Alliance at Intel and Caroline Roan, Vice President of Corporate Responsibility and Reputation at Pfizer.
I stood up already. You're in the middle.
Yeah. I introduced you.
Yeah, we were too busy talking. I should pay better attention. Okay.
Okay, we got an hour. We got a couple of minutes of, we'll give a brief, each of our panelists will give a brief overview of the projects that we're working on. We have 8 questions that we have identified as topics, and hopefully we'll be able to speed us through as many of those as we can and provide at least 20 minutes of questions at the end, and then you can have a cocktail. Okay, the first order of business is to go right down the line. Caroline, give them a brief overview of what you're working on, what you're interested in, maybe a minute or so.
Sure. Well, first I just want to thank all of you for holding out for 4 o'clock. It's great to be here, and this is my old stomping ground, although I did go to SEPA, not the B school. But it's great to be here. I think for me, it's terrific because while Pfizer is more than 150 years old, we have a very clearly defined social purpose, which is to discover, develop, and bring to market new medicines that help people live longer and fuller and better lives. And because of that, I think it's allowed us to do some really interesting social programs, but also work on integrated reporting, which is something that we're very proud of. We're still in the process of that, but I think it's going to be great to have an opportunity today to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. Richard?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Richard Hall with Intel Corporation, and a lot more important than my bio is really a statement of Intel's corporate mission in one brief sentence, which is to create and extend computing technology to connect and enrich the lives of everyone on Earth. That's a social mission and goal as well as a business mission and goal, and we believe the two are closely intertwined. And perhaps in the comments and Q&A, I can give you some more details and specific examples of how we're trying to achieve that and learn from all of you how to achieve it better.
So I would echo thank you for having us here and for making it through. And like the two of you, I have the good fortune of working for a company who is in the business of building a smarter planet. And so really everything that we do is about using technology to create sustainability and to create what we define as smarter cities on a smarter planet. I'm extra lucky because I get to sit in the corporate citizenship organization, which is purely devoted to thinking about how do we give back to the communities where we do business, and to be on the board of the directors of the IBM Foundation. So play both of those roles.
Thank you, Jen. You know, there's been a lot of talk of sustainability and corporate citizenship as a separate piece within the operation of a company. Let's get your perspective on how you integrate sustainability into the core strategy. How do you really get it up to the executive level, to the board level, to a place where it's integrated in all aspects of the company? Who wants to take that one on first? All right, Richard, go for it.
Well, it's a long process that takes a lot of effort, and I'll give you an analogy from my own experience a few years back, more than a few years back. I used to be in Intel's manufacturing organization, and a very different type of work than I'm doing now. But I remember there was a period of time where we had a string of accidents at one of our manufacturing facilities in the Southwest, and we realized that we had this safety department, and there was a safety officer, a couple of employees, and that was a departmental function. They did safety. But over time, we changed the awareness of all the employees, the consciousness of the company that safety wasn't something a little department did. It was something that was embedded in each employee's daily activities. And I was part of helping to achieve that. Over time, you see the same process happening with us and with other companies, embedding social responsibility, environmental, social, and governance principles and goals into daily operations, as well as, or in addition to, being a specific department where people have CSR on their business card. And it's an evolution that takes time over a period of years with companies. And but if you have leadership at the top, that's the other principle. You have to have a CEO and a board that cares about this and is willing to pull along and drive the rest of the corporation. So it takes time, but we're getting there, and it's not something that you can expect to see quickly with really large corporations. We've advanced quite a ways, but we still have a ways more to go.
Caroline, you want to add something?
I was just going to add two other factors. I think you hit on the fact that you cannot underestimate the importance of a board of directors and CEO in driving a responsible business strategy. But also, I think there is the commitment of the employees. So when you connect with them and they understand the importance for Pfizer, that goes from compliance to safety, all the way through to our access programs, that makes a huge difference. I think the other element, which I know you've talked a lot about in your work, is compensation. Not all companies are there yet, but when you start to compensate employees for driving a responsible agenda, that's a big lever in terms of achieving true integration.
Now let me take a brief vote here. How many people in the audience are going to discriminate against a company, not go to work for a company for not having a real in-depth sustainability, socially responsible effort? How many people would not work for a company? Oh, there's some people that would. Right? That's interesting. All right, let's do the flip side. Let me get a show of hands of those people that are going to apply and go to work for or try to do something with a sustainable, socially responsible company that has it embedded in their core strategy. How many people are really, I know that I'm going to do that. Oh, that's wow. Okay. So, geez. What about, IBM is doing so much, Jen, and I really wanted to give a chance for you to talk about the smarter cities and what you were very modest in your introduction and not mentioning it. So maybe you'd share with the audience some of what's happening in the smarter cities.
Sure. Well, I would echo on the last question as well, the employee involvement, and that speaks to smarter cities and to another program we have called Corporate Service Corps. I mean, I think one of the things that we do at IBM is we enact our values through employees who really build the programs together. So we have 110,000 IBMers who volunteer regularly through our on-demand community program. which gives people tools to how do you get on a board in your community? How do you do fundraising better? How can you be more connected to nonprofit organizations and really leverage the skills that you have? So that's a baseline. Then for our top talent employees, people who are really going to be the future leaders of the company, we have a program called Corporate Service Corps. This program started about 5 years ago, and the notion was, what if we sent teams of 10 IBMers, generally they come from 10 different countries, and they go to a developing country to work on a service project. Might be environmental, might be educational, could be economic development. They're there for 4 weeks, they live together, eat together, drink together, work together. And it's somewhat of a sabbatical from their regular jobs. They're at full pay, but they're doing this service work. And that program was quite an experiment. It's been a huge success. We've been very fortunate to get publicized in Harvard Business Review, and Fortune magazine named us the #1 company for developing global leaders as a result, which was a byproduct, right? Because the initial thing was really to make an impact in the communities. So the Harvard Business Review article that I referenced was where we actually went to Harvard and we said, we need a third-party objective study. 4 weeks is a short time. How much can you actually accomplish? Are we making an impact, or is it a drop in the bucket? Can you give us a look and tell us how we should evolve this? And so, so that was a look, and for the most part, it really was making an impact. Particularly, I know capacity building has been a big topic here today. We're working with nonprofits that have very, very small numbers of people. And so to learn how to leverage technology, to learn how to connect with each other so that they can build capacity has been huge for them. So in any case, it's an exciting program. At the end of this year, we will have sent 2,000 IBMers on this program over the course of the last 5 years, and it's growing still. And what you referenced is Smarter Cities Challenge, which is a sort of a takeoff on that program that's very much focused on cities and issues they're facing. And I can talk more about that, but I don't want to hog the conversation.
Well, I wanted to follow up on this, on part of that, and this other idea of the, you know, there's been a lot of talk of conflict minerals and whether or not companies should disclose their their supply chain in conflict minerals. How do you ensure in your companies, in your operations, that if somebody is doing something illegal or not satisfying it, would, you know, and give some advice to some of the audience on what would, you know, what's in place there, and you know, you're passionate about the topic, but you know this thing, that something's going on that's wrong. Well, how do you handle that?
Okay, that's one that Intel has been tackling. So I'll take first crack at it. There are what Joe's referring to, conflict minerals. Many of you probably know, and particularly in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, it's gold, tungsten, tantalum, and tin. And I remember at GTTT, that are mined by these are miners that, you know, they get 3 sacks full in a wheelbarrow, and that's their mining operation. They go and have these minerals extracted from the rocks, but the profits end up ultimately, unfortunately, some of them, to pay for AK-47s, for civil conflicts and wars and bloodshed and violence. You know, this was something that we didn't realize. This is something way down deep, buried in our supply chain, leading all the way up to the finished microprocessor that's inside many of the laptops that are out on the tables here. But once we were made aware of it, we set up a program in cooperation with others to dig down real deep in the supply chain. We actually sent people to the Congo and have now inspected 48, that last count, smelter operations to try to cleanse the supply chain of this problem. And our goal is by 2013 is to be able to officially certify. We're getting there. Again, these things take a lot of time to certify that an Intel microprocessor that you have inside your MacBook or your laptop there is conflict mineral free. And we can say that with total confidence, but it takes a while to get there. And it has, by the way, indirect effects that you don't intend. These miners with 3 sacks full of ore and a wheelbarrow, they're out of business because you have to go to a supply chain that's controllable. So they don't have a job anymore, but you will have solved the conflict mineral issue. It's complex, but we've tackled it and we've spent a lot of effort solving it, and we're on the path to get it fixed.
Is there something in place where like a whistleblower policy that would protect somebody when they see an egregious violation of international law or even a human rights violation? What do you know, I mean, you know, any one of you can comment on that.
Yes.
All right, you guys have.
Yeah, we use
Okay.
a number of different internal whistleblower policies depending upon the kind of thing that you're seeing, whether it's, you know, up through HR for those kinds of things, for the supply chain, or, you know, something like a bribery, you would go up through legal. So there's a number of those, and those are publicized each year through our business conduct guidelines. So every IBMer signs an agreement that says not only will they follow a particular set of guidelines, but that they are responsible for reporting should they see you know, poor conduct taking place in any one of the countries where we do business. Whether it's legal in that country or not, by the way, because we're in, you know, well over 140 countries. So we say this is the conduct, the code of conduct that we agree to live by as IBMers. And even if it's legal in this country, this is how we conduct ourselves.
What were you going to say, Caroline?
Just similarly, I think most of you all know the pharmaceutical industry writ large has gone through a number of issues in the most recent years related to compliance. And for Pfizer, we have a chief compliance officer that sits on our executive leadership team. So the importance of compliance as an issue of materiality for the company is huge. We have a number of internal and external mechanisms in place to ensure that we capture behavior that might be happening that we're not aware of. But I'd also just like to give a nod to the role of industry associations and industry work to help support supply chain safety and accountability. And there are a number of different groups that work across the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm sure across your industries, where we share best practices, we help to monitor and share what we're doing in terms of training and accountability.
Well, let's follow that up with a question of whether there's been any failures in that system. And what I know that each one of your companies are impeccable in their operations and in their compliance, but maybe you can share with us a failure within that system that you learned something from that was significant. I know that you could be as diplomatic as you want with it, but
I volunteered to do failure, but it wasn't in that category.
Well, it doesn't have to be that category, but that's a pretty good one.
I'm gonna return back to the program that I was talking about and one of the learnings that we had on the way there, because frankly it's just more my expertise than the compliance piece. And that was, as we were first developing these teams, we initially set it up as people within the developed world going as volunteers into the developing world. And that seemed to make sense at the time, and people were very excited to have this opportunity. And it wasn't until further down the road where I had a colleague from India say, what are you doing? Why don't you have people from India, people from Africa coming and working on projects in the United States and Western Europe and Australia? And, you know, shame on us for not setting it up that way from the beginning, which we absolutely should have. So we made that adjustment and made it more of a global program. But I think it was that kind of a feedback where I look back on it now and I really feel a little bit embarrassed about the way we started the program being, you know, unidirectional.
That's a good one.
I would just, yeah, thanks. I would just say that, you know, it's really important that, and all of you have seen the headlines, as I've said, around a number of different settlements that have happened across our industry, but across multiple industries. And I think at the end of the day, what that suggests is that some companies were slow in recognizing that transparency matters and that you have got to be transparent about your business operations, and that the more transparent you are, the better off society is, and frankly, the better off the company is. And so Pfizer's taken a number of steps from, you know, actually recording every single payment we make to physicians and publicly disclosing that, all the way through to posting our clinical trial information on our government websites. So I think there's been perhaps it was a delayed response, but an important rapid response of multinational companies in recognizing the importance of transparency and engagement.
Well, Caroline, you just gave me like a beach ball with that one.
Am I going to need to leave?
No. We're going to talk. We're going to give you some context for the next question. Here's what happened. We had the University of California dip into the archives of CSR Wire and take 17,000 voluntary disclosures from CSR Wire and analyze them on one particular category of transparency, and that was greenhouse gas emissions. This is on our site, so you can check it out. The research is there. And it'll follow up with this question that I'm about to ask them. And what they found was that those companies that voluntarily disclosed their greenhouse gas emissions, the investment community was able to price the risk. So when a company voluntarily disclosed their greenhouse gas emission, the investment community priced the risk and rewarded the company with a higher stock price. If a company didn't voluntarily disclose their greenhouse gas emission, the investment community priced the risk at a higher level because they didn't know. And as a result, they punished the company. And it wasn't a significant punishment, 2-3%, but it still was a punishment. So what this research has found is that those companies that voluntarily disclose certain initiatives, they get rewarded for that. They get rewarded from the investment community for this voluntary disclosure. So my question is, in your experience and within your companies, how do you make that connection between a voluntary disclosure or transparency and increased shareholder value? It's almost a loaded question because it might not be in your departments, but as we talked about it earlier, it's something that everybody here really wants to know. How do you make that connection, and what are some of the areas that you think that connection could be made within your organizations?
I think there's clearly a huge connection, not just between shareholder value, but also to, is this a place where talented people like you want to come and work, that clients want to buy from, and so on. And so I don't think that we have to be legally required to do that. We're very aggressive and active about being transparent across the board. So at IBM, we have a corporate responsibility working group that combines people from investor relations, environmental affairs, supply chain, HR, et cetera, probably 8 or 9 different groups that regularly get together to do that kind of reporting, to be voluntary about it, to work with the organizations cross industry that you kind of described, and make sure that we are doing those report outs. And then on an annual basis, I think we're thinking of moving to quarterly, but on an annual basis, we do a report out to the investment community as well, to tie out what we're reporting to the investment community through our annual report with what we're reporting through our responsibility report.
Does management try to make that connection? Can they make a financial connection? Is there any system in place at IBM with all the computer capacity and intellectual capacity that you have to try to make that connection, to monetize that?
I don't know that that's true across the board, but certainly the management support is there. We have annual report out to the board of directors. Those get looked over pretty well before we do that report, as well as to the entire investment community. So, so those ties are being made.
At Pfizer, we've moved to an integrated report. I'm sure many of you have read about this movement in your studies, that there is a desire for companies to increasingly integrate their CSR reporting with their annual reporting and their financial reporting, to Joe's point. And Pfizer has taken steps down that road. We do issue one report. However, we still have a ways to go to tie back all of our financials to what our key performance indicators are in the environment, social, and governance space. But we're making good inroads in that process, and we work very, very closely with our investor relations group and as well as our corporate governance group. And we do that because our investors broadly, whether they be mainstream or socially responsible investors, care about these issues that are material to the company: access to medicines, where we are in terms of compliance, so safety, counterfeiting. These are all issues that kind of cut across and blend for a healthcare company, and I think lend itself to more integrated conversations with investor relations as well as broadly with the investor community.
You want to make a comment or not? You
Sure.
don't have to.
No, sure. I'm glad to. There's a model of thinking about a big multinational corporation like we work for. You know, you can turn on CNBC and listen to news about stock price fluctuations day to day or quarter to quarter. That's very interesting. I do it sometimes. But really, it's this vast ecology of employees, suppliers, contractors, consultants, people who want to work for you or might one day want to work for you, people who used to work for you. It's this enormous connected ecology. And at the heart of it all, I'll go back to a saying. I'll make this simpler than it is, but there was a former CEO of Intel saying that he had, which I have used countless times since. His name's Andy Grove. He's since retired. And he said, always do the right thing right. And you know what the right thing is because you feel it right in here, whether or not you're doing it. So he operated on gut instinct a lot as a CEO, and he's very successful and one of the great business leaders we've had in our industry. But when you can't just have one division or one individual or one part of the company that's driving to maximize profit to the exclusion of the consideration of this whole vast ecology that the corporation lives within and is connected to. That's a model for thinking about it that I commend to you.
We got a couple more questions before we go to the audience, and this is, I don't know if it's a rhetorical question or not, but we had an experience where we did an investigation on a company that had produced a corporate social responsibility report, and we cross-referenced the representations that they made in their corporate social responsibility report with the disclosures they made to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and there was a conflict between those two. So you could imagine the challenge when the CSR department says one thing and the investor relations is distributing information on the other side. So is there a formal process within your organization to communicate, to connect the communication between CSR and investor relations? Is there something at your place that you know of?
So we absolutely are, while we don't report in through the same structure, I report in through a small corporate function. As I said, we work hand in glove. So we have to produce an integrated report. And the nature of producing that report means we have to sit with investor relations, we have to sit with our financial people, and we have to ensure that what we produce is accurate and reflective of the performance of the company.
So everything that's on the CSR and sustainability report that you're representing there is the same representation that you're making to the Securities and Exchange Commission?
Yes.
That's great.
The extent to which we, and I want to be clear though, I think that it's really easy to talk about this integrated reporting, but it's actually incredibly difficult to do, which you've talked about. We don't have global standards for one report. Right. We don't have standards across each industry, and that makes it hard. So I qualify that by saying that yes, we work hand in glove, but our key performance indicators in the ESG space are still in development. And so we started with a small set and they're beginning to grow.
How about an Intel?
Yeah, I'll offer another philosophical observation about big organizations, big corporate organizations, is that from the outside, when you look at one of our reports or perhaps hear one of us speak, it looks a lot more organized than it is. Because within a corporate organization, you have a number of different departments that try to communicate with each other effectively, but we don't always succeed. I'll give you the example. A couple days ago, I've been in here in New York for a good part of this week, and I ran into a colleague from Intel. Number one, I didn't know him. And number two, I didn't know he's going to be at the same conference in New York. Well, that's okay. That happens. You just can't conceivably, this is someone from our research and development organization, you can't conceivably across all these departments with 100,000 employees figure these things out. So we do the best that we can up to and including formal reporting, but you know, it's an ideal goal to try to reach, and it's a tough challenge with the best effort and the best will toward it.
So is investor relations connected with the CSR reporting initiatives?
Yeah, we are tied together and talk to them on a daily basis, and I think we have a good track record.
Today. Go ahead. Jen.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, okay. The group that I mentioned, the report doesn't go to press until everyone in that group is signed off, and that includes investor relations.
That's great. Now, my last question I ask everywhere I have an opportunity to ask this question, and I invariably get the same answer. So I'm not going to be surprised with the answer. And you guys may or may not be surprised with the answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Since the United States, since the Stock Exchange and the Securities and Exchange Commission in the United States really emphasizes maximizing shareholder value, and there are other stock exchanges around the world, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the Indonesia Stock Exchange, there are other stock exchanges that require more disclosure and are more tuned into socially responsible, sustainable business practices. Would you encourage your company to change their a trading platform from the United States to another country?
I would like to take that first.
Yeah, and you can say what I expect you to say that you would.
Really can't comment.
I'm not qualified to comment on that myself, I'll admit.
No comment.
Okay. I had to ask it. And that's the answer I get every time. So what we're going to do with the question and answer here is we're going to make sure that everybody gets a microphone, and everybody can I hope you got a couple people out there that got the microphones. Stand up, say your name, what you're interested in, and since we only have about 15 or 20 minutes, have it be a question, you know, like a question, not a speech or a pitch or something, but a question for the audience. So, what do we? And it could be for any one of us. We're fine. And who's got a question? Don't tell me we answered everybody's question. Oh, we got one over there. Go ahead.
Okay. A question. I'm really surprised.
Well, you got to state your name, what you're interested in, what you want to do.
No, because I was following your order to be short.
What? Okay. Be tall.
Okay. My name is Ariel Rojas. I'm the president and founder of a nonprofit organization called Trans Diaspora Network that deal with HIV prevention among low-income teenagers here in New York. And my question is very short, following your advice. I'm surprised that we have IBM, Pfizer?
Yeah, Pfizer.
And what is the other one?
Intel.
Intel. That are promoting social innovation in the communities and at a global level. But if I go to the community and I say IBM, Intel, and Pfizer are doing social innovation, sorry about your name of the company, but are doing good innovation for the community, how you will explain to them that you are really impacting their life? Because what happened is like none of them know about you. So we are here in this forum. It's a beautiful forum, Ivy League forum. I like it because I'm an Ivy League too. But the problem is like how you translate those results into tangible solutions for people that are really suffering. Not to come out with good ideas, but they do fundraising with the salaries every day. So if you have an answer for that, that will be lovely.
Yeah, I'll tackle it because that's a problem IBM faces both in business and in philanthropy. We're a B2B company. We do very few things that touch consumers at all. We make massive, complex systems. And that's true in our philanthropy as well, because what we want to give is that what we do for a business, our software, our services, and so on. So generally, our giving is not to a specific individual. It's to a community. It's to a city. It's to entities that are very complex. So that might be working with a mayor on how to address something like a school system. We've just partnered with Mayor Bloomberg on opening up P-TECH, which is a 9 through 14 school that recently was opened in Brooklyn, to help students there that need to get skills. The dropout rate in community colleges is very high. How do you get skills for the 21st century so that you're actually employable on the other side? So IBM has partnered to help build the curriculum to say, hey, this is what we're hiring for. This is what we need, the skills we need students to have. Let us partner with you. So it's that kind of philanthropy. We do many, many things that touch individuals through our employees, but what you're likely to see is the face of the employee, not the face of IBM. And as long as we're making an impact, we're okay with that.
All right. Next question. You're all done now. That was a good question. Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Carolyn.
You got to state your name,
okay.
What you're interested in, what you're doing.
My name's Chris. I'm interning at a corporate social responsibility company. As far as that goes, it's a very vague subject. As far as a drug company, do you feel that the American public is over-medicated and over-prescribed medicines, especially the psychotherapeutic type? The rapid rise from the 1990s. And do you feel it's a social responsibility to change the way that you market those drugs?
That's a good question. I didn't ask it. How do you answer that one?
Look, thanks for the question. It's important to have that conversation, and I think that what is also important to note is the hard work that the company does do to educate providers and patients about the medications that we do produce. And at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of all the sort of chain of healthcare providers to ensure that that relationship between patient and provider is sacred and that they make appropriate decisions for that patient. And in terms of our marketing, we have taken made a number of steps to address stakeholder concerns, patient concerns, and physician concerns about direct-to-consumer marketing and other things that we have done in the United States. And I think that there are a set of guidelines that the Industry Association has put out in terms of how we market those products on TV. And so, you know, I appreciate the question and I understand it, but I think that if you step back and really look at what both the industry and Pfizer has done, you'll see a record that I do stand by. And we do work very, very hard to ensure that those medicines are safe and that our providers are educated with the appropriate information.
That's a great answer. That's a great question and a great answer. Next. Where are we? On the other side of the room?
Thank you.
How you doing?
Hi.
Nice
Robert Levin, CEO of TransClick, which is a social enterprise involved with mobile multilingual messaging in 190 countries. And we're now starting a mobile health app store for the developing world. So my question is about the broadband connectivity that all of you are involved with. There's about 1 billion broadband connections, and it's going to grow to 5 billion broadband connections in the next 5-6 years. So to what extent are your respective CSR programs involved with mobile health and mobile broadband for the social benefits that each of your companies can engage in?
I can take a stab at that one. You know, it's really interesting. Broadband availability is perhaps the single biggest barrier in some geographies to adopting technology that would empower and enrich people's lives. You hit the nail right on the head. We found about 2 years ago, and by the way, one thing about social innovation is that it's sometimes something that's right in front of you, and you can have lots of meetings and task forces, but you hit on something that's really obvious. We found that one huge barrier to uptake or adoption of technology in a lot of places was the fact that there was a monthly broadband rate. Let's say it's the equivalent of $30 US or $20 US. It's too expensive. You look at the 1-year cost of having a very modest laptop. It might be $250 or $300, but then it's the same amount for a year's worth of broadband connectivity. So we moved to helping governments and telco providers to a model of prepaid broadband where you can get a card just like you can for a cell phone for talking, you know, for $2 and $3 and $5 chunks at a time. And that opened up a tremendous amount of capability for people to access affordable broadband. It was an affordability issue, which is separate from infrastructure. But that's one program we have. There are 6 countries where we've made a real difference with it. And then on the infrastructure side, we have similar programs. But it's an incremental thing over many years to solve that problem. But you have hit one of the big nails of technology adoption right on the head, sir.
Thank you, Richard. We'll go on another side of the room again.
Great, thank you. My name is Laura Rosen. I'm with an organization called GBC Health, and we work with companies very much like the three of you to get them engaged in addressing major global health challenges, starting with HIV/AIDS and going on through malaria and chronic disease and things like that. Joe, you asked a question at the beginning about connecting sustainability with CSR and the difficulty sometimes of finding the business case behind that. The challenge I have for the three of you, or which one of you would like to be in the line of fire, the extra wrinkle to that is connecting human sustainability, which is really health and some other things, to what everybody thinks of when they think of sustainability, which is environmental sustainability. Yet health is one of the most straightforward business cases because of better health impacting productivity and a decrease in absenteeism and all that. How do you think we can get the corporate community and anybody else who needs to start thinking about sustainability more holistically and keeping human sustainability and health in that mix?
You want to take that one?
Jump in on this one? I think it's a really interesting question, and I know GBC well, and I think it's just a great organization. But I think it's a really important issue, because I used to say when I came into this sort of CSR world, why are there so many words, and why does somebody say accountability and somebody say sustainability and other people say ESG, and then other people don't know what ESG is? And you just get caught up in that, and I think by getting caught up in that discussion, it loses the power of what it's about. And so in that context, I talk about it as a responsible business growth strategy. And for responsibility for companies will look very different. So for Pfizer, we have very important accomplishments in the E category. But for us, the S is critically important. We're about health. And so I think that you've hit on something that we haven't solved collectively in our own field to clarify and simplify the language. So we're going to let you solve that problem for us.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it also harkens back to my original comment in regarding a shift in consciousness. We're really experiencing a shift in consciousness where we're all connected, and there's just the way that the companies are integrating their sustainability with their financial reporting, it's going to ultimately come to the point where the human element, we're all humans, we're all really connected. There's no us and them, or them or whatever, it's us. So it's going to take a little time, and all the work everybody here is doing is going to facilitate that effort. So just keep doing the work we're all doing.
Yeah, I think that's right. And what I would add to it is I do see that shift happening. I think at IBM, when we hear the phrase sustainability, we don't immediately go to environment. We talk a lot about systems thinking. And as we're talking to cities city leaders who are responsible for these huge systems that we call cities, making those connections. We just finished a project in Louisville, Kentucky, where they are using technology to put chips onto kids' asthma inhalers, so that when a kid has an asthma attack and takes a puff, there's a GPS device that automatically says where they are. So then you can do the analysis to say, what are the environmental factors that are affecting the onset of this very complicated thing called asthma? And how do we start to parse that? And so now they've got NIH working with them and other organizations. And so you see whether it's a lot of partners and collaborators coming together that are working on the problem or the problem itself, everything is just crossing over. So I think that's happening. And
that's a great example. That's a solid example. We'll go on this side of the room for the next question.
Thank you. My name is Jenny Tolan. I'm a first-year MBA student and have worked in international development, specifically in Costa Rica. I was excited to see Richard from Intel because this morning with Fernando Fabre of the Endeavor Global, heard that I worked in Costa Rica and said to me, he was trying to say, what is a social enterprise? We were all struggling with that. And how do you define it? And he said, for example, Intel went into Costa Rica and created a huge number of jobs. So do you consider Intel a social enterprise? And I just wanted to bring that up to you, Richard, and to both panelists, can you say you're a social enterprise? And if so, when you go into a country, what are the other things you're evaluating to make sure that you're, are there guidelines or qualifications that you're looking at as you expand globally?
Sure. The answer to your question is Intel in Costa Rica a social enterprise? The answer is no, we're not. It doesn't fit the definition of social enterprise as we understand it, and I think is broadly accepted, which is that you produce revenue and it goes right back in and is reinvested in the business. There's no profit to shareholders or lenders or investors. So it wouldn't qualify. Intel has projects that we believe do, but not specifically that. The other part of your question, how do we select where we go as a company and build facilities? Did I have that correct?
Yes, and look at your sustainability impact in a new country.
Yeah, that's an itch. I've been at Intel for almost 22 years, so I've done different things for the company. You see gray hair, I'm a little older, I've been around. I go back to an earlier generation and at the company. And I did, at one point, site selection for manufacturing and R&D facilities, and I traveled around the world and had experience picking sites. And it's interesting. We had to look at what I would regard at that time in this round of site selection. It was in the late 90s where we established several new sites. We had to look at what I would call a very early iteration or version of sustainability, how much of a footprint we'd have on the workforce, water supply, the land, the environment, and so on. It's much more advanced now. I go back to my theme of this, change happens incrementally over time. We have much more advanced analysis and data to work with. But at that time, when I was working on it for a couple of years, we did take that into account. The Costa Rica plant, for example, if any of you who go to Costa Rica for vacation or business, it has a very light environmental footprint. It's a great facility. It employs about 4,500 Costa Ricans, largest private sector employer in the company. And it produces the largest export, dollar for dollar, colone for colone, out of the country of any other business. So we're very proud of it, and we like to think that we did assess those factors. If we were going to build a plant today, tomorrow, we are more sophisticated than ever before in assessing those as well.
We define a social enterprise as applying the tools and practices of business that solves a social or environmental challenge. That's our simple definition of it. So if a company is applying the tools and practices of business to solve a social or environmental challenge, to us it's a social enterprise. We'll go on that side of the room. We'll go back and forth because there's only about 2 on each side now.
Hey, my name is Decker Gongang. I'm an associate with Echoing Green. My question is about the intersection of diversity and corporate social responsibility. I want to know how that's influenced your practices of your companies, but also suggestions that you would have for the social change space. Quick caveat, working in the corporate sector and then now working in the social sector for about 5 years, I found that the corporate sector had outpaced the diversity that I've seen in the nonprofit and NGO space. So I would love to see what your strategies would be for social change organizations, small and large, to increase their diversity.
Well, whenever we build a new program at IBM, we always talk about how it has to check off multiple boxes. It has to showcase our technology, it has to help to build talent, and it has to address and build upon our foundation of diversity. So in any program, you know, as we particularly do these team-based things, we look at that from a number of angles. My colleague Lyle Sakawe, who's sitting in the audience, spends a lot of time building these teams where I say, we don't have enough women. This is all one age group. They're only from 3 countries. Let's see if we can get 6 countries. How do we do, you know, even to the point of cognitive styles. We've got all extroverts here. We've talked to their manager. These people are going to live together for 3 weeks. It's going to be a mess. So we really pound on that and really thinking about diversity in a very broad sense of the word. We're also lucky the working group that I talked about, we have a representative from diversity. We sit on their diversity council. So there's a lot of play back and forth to make sure the programs are feeding one another.
Caroline, you want to add something to that?
Well, I'm sorry that I've been coughing through this presentation. I've been quite sick, but I just think it's a very good point you make about the NGO sector. And I would just go so far as to say that I think the recognition that diversity of experience, diversity of perspective is the only thing that's going to carry us forward. We are living at such an interesting time, a time of great government failure, of frankly, corporate failure. And we've got these huge social challenges ahead of us. And if we don't have a group of people who think differently together in a room solving for it, I don't think we're going to get there. Now, I don't know how you drive that in terms of actually getting that through the NGO community or frankly through the corporate community, but every chance I get, I try to reference the important role that sort of challenging perspectives brings to what I think will be great beauty in solving for these problems.
Great. On this side?
Hi, Tess Mateo from CX Catalyst. Thank you so much for your comments. My question...
Whoa, you said it so fast. You don't know what you're doing now. Come on.
Sorry, I work with large multinational companies taking their green technologies, green economy technologies in clean water, clean energy, health, sustainable food, and waste management, and we turn them into micro-franchise, or not micro, just franchise opportunities for women in emerging markets. So my question was if any of your companies have any programs that drive green and inclusive growth, specifically in the emerging markets, like how do you create economic opportunities for the disadvantaged, the poor, the women, the indigenous, the youth, around specifically in those areas in which you're trying to create enabling technologies? If you have
Sure.
If you have any.
I can take it. So I keep coming back to Corporate Service Corps, but it's an incredibly powerful tool because it enables us to send a team of people in to work with a woman who started a business and to talk through how do you go about getting a loan? How do you hire people? How can you bring this, create a business for yourself and so on. We often have people who continue those mentoring relationships long after they leave the country. And then when you get to the next phase, say in many countries you have a company that's maybe up to 5, 6 people, you've been in business for a couple years, you want to grow it further. IBM has partnered with the IFC, International Finance Corporation, which is the commercial side of the World Bank. to create something called Small and Medium Enterprise Toolkit. And that's a set of tools that we have in 35 countries, 18 languages, that help small business owners to take things to the next level. And that might be about technology, but it also might be about how do you do basic payroll processing? How do you get office space? How do you deal with taxes and regulations? So there's all of these tools that are available on there, and what's key is that they're in local language and they're locally relevant. So that's one of the ways that we try to be of assistance.
I guess I'd like to be clear.
We're going to have time for maybe, there's 2 people left, and we've only got a couple minutes left. So if you could if you give the question quick and we give a good quick answer, then we'll be on time, which would be pretty, I think we'll be on time, right? So go ahead, over here.
Thanks. My name is Sarah Smith. I'm a first-year joint degree student with the Yale School of Management and Yale School of Forestry and Environment. And my question is about stakeholder engagement. In my previous role, I wrote the sustainability report for my company, Green Mountain Energy, and we had a lot of trouble making sure that we engaged with stakeholders to see what they wanted us to be talking about. Can you talk about strategies that your companies have used to make sure that you're reaching out to the right type of people and any challenges that you've seen along the way?
That's a great question. What are we doing?
Yeah, you know, there's no real magic solution. We go out on a structured basis and talk to the stakeholder community, the socially responsible investors to start with. We have a sort of annual tour where we go and visit a huge number of them and get their feedback and their input. Then there are a lot of less formal channels where we try to do it. But I don't know how many programs you could create to really capture all of it. You just have to listen as well as you can, use the channels that you have. Actually, this conference right here is a channel. I mean, we're here to listen as much as we are to speak to you. We're here listening to your questions. So we do the best we can with our ears as wide open as we can make them.
You know, that's a great question, and we struggle. Every one of the members that we do business with struggle with that same question. And there is going to be there's an opportunity. There's a business opportunity, stakeholder engagement for corporate social responsibility reporting and sustainability. There's an opportunity. There's a business opportunity, and it's being met by some young technology people in California that contact us on a regular basis, so you'll see that coming up soon. We got one last question, and then we can have a cocktail, or you guys can do it wherever you want to go.
Sure. My name is Leah Peterson-Thomas. I'm the founder of a social enterprise, MGood, crowdfunding, crowdsourcing for NPOs and social causes. I hate to play the Milton Friedman in the room, but I'm curious about really how you're directing metrics and strategy around increasing shareholder value with your CSR agenda. And in addition, do you believe that with additional connectivity between increasing shareholder value and CSR agendas, the CSR will have additional credence / credibility in industries across the world?
So on the metrics question, I will say that I think for a healthcare company, measuring the social impact is actually a little bit easier to do, because when we go in and launch a program, we go in and we identify exactly what we want to accomplish, and then we measure that over time. For our shareholders, I think that there are 1,000 different studies out there written by a number of different top 5 firms that would suggest over time a company with a strong performance either on Dow Jones or on any of the indices will outperform, their stock will outperform over time. So to me, that's been well documented. I think the challenge is back to what Joe's talked about, which is truly integrating on a financial level your key performance indicators in a space called ESG with your financial indicators that investors look at. And there are also a number of different global efforts underway to bring about sort of centralized reporting. So the Global Reporting Initiative is one that we use, and we have when we have our report reviewed and we have our stakeholders look at it, they look against that criteria. So there are actually more out there than I think most people realize in terms of how you actually measure, but I don't think we've completely solved it yet because there's no global standard.
We're getting close. Let's give this panel a great big round of applause. Thank you very much. Nice job. Nice job. And thank you.